Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber with Everyone Loves Guitar, and I'm with one of my New York brothers here today with the amazing Bobby Broom out of Chicago, but originally from New York. Actually, he's born in Harlem, raised in the Upper West Side of New York City, started playing guitar at age 12. And check this out, 5 years later at 17, he was playing with Sonny Rollins at Carnegie Hall. He toured and recorded with Sonny from 81 to 86, and again, most recently from 2005 to 2010, and played on 5 of Sonny's records. During his early years, Bobby also performed with trumpeters Browne and Hugh Masakela, pianists Weldon, Irvine, and Dave Grusin, and Charlie Parker pianist Haig and Walter Bishop Jr. By 1981, when you were like 19, that's amazing. Wow. Bobby recorded his, 19, jazz dude in New York City, and you're a badass, man. That's says a lot. Bobby recorded his debut as a band leader, and then he relocated to Chicago later that decade while continuing to work with Kenny Burrell, Stanley Turrentine, Charles Earland, Miles Davis, Kenny Garrett, Dr. John, and others over the next 20 years. Throughout his career, Bobby's also been active as a jazz educator. He graduated from Music and Art High School in Manhattan, and he holds a Master's of Music in Jazz Pedagogy. Did I say that right?
Pedagogy.
Pedagogy. That's like a word you say once in a lifetime.
I only said it to get into school. That was my
Well, good for you. But he holds a degree in jazz pedagogy from Northwestern University, another very high academic school. His first teaching experience is under the auspices of Jackie McLean at the University of Hartford's Hart School of Music. Prior to his current position at North Park University, Bobby was a jazz faculty member at DePaul University for 6 years. He conducts clinics, master classes, and lectures nationwide and abroad, and he's also an artist and instructor with the Thelonious Monk Institute and the Ravinia Jazz Mentor Program. He's recorded with both his Bobby Broom Trio and the disbanded Deep Blue Organ Trio. He was recognized as one of the top guitarists in Downbeat Magazine's annual critics poll for 3 years, from 2012 to 14. His 2014 album, My Shining Hour, received a New York Times review and placed at number 3 on the U.S. National Jazz Radio Chart. His latest recording, which we'll talk about today, it's his 14th solo record. It's with his new organ group, the Bobby Broom Organization. Great record, and they were actually the opening act for Steely Dan's 50-city North American tour of 2014. The new record was produced by Steve Jordan, and I don't know why I'm missing the rest of the bio here, and it's a great record, and so we're going to talk about that. Dude, thank you so much for your time, man. How the hell did I get, and delivers blank? What the hell did I do there, man? That's really classy. Dude, all right, man. Thanks so much, man. Yeah, man. This is such an impressive background, man.
It when I hear it or read it, it sounds incredible to me. It's crazy, but it happened. So, it's like, okay, I got to believe it. I remember some of those things.
must be true.
Yeah.
Man, so this way I could say the word one more time in my life. What is the curriculum focused around in a jazz pedagogy degree? I have not heard of that.
So pedagogy is like, it's the study of teaching, the teaching of a certain subject, right? How to teach a certain subject. So in this case, how to teach jazz music. All right. So we did a lot of student teaching, or, did mock lectures, and various other things. We had a class, I don't remember what the name of the class was, but in this particular class, and I'm talking, we had there were maybe 3 or 4 master's degree students in a class, so just like a handful of us, right? And we're learning how to develop and put together a curriculum vitae, your CV, which is like a highfalutin resume. Yeah. And you're supposed to put like, I wiped my butt in 19, every of anything that you did in your career.
Les Paul gave me his pick when I saw him at the Vanguard.
It's ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous and a bit much for my taste, but it's, when I've got 9 pages of stuff, and I've heard of people having way more than that, and I felt that I needed to. I couldn't possibly put every single gig I ever did, every single event. So, I just tried to do the highlights, and it's still with performances, teaching experience, articles written about me, articles that I wrote, it's everything. Yeah. So, and then, you're learning to teach whatever the curriculum is and talking about developing curriculum and just all of that, the art of teaching or the practice of teaching.
So this is actually pretty smart. So you basically set up your plan B to get paid for teaching at a high level, and you knew you were going to play, but that's really sharp, man.
Well, I mean, it's
who thinks of that at that age? I mean, that was like, how did you?
Well, what I did, you're right, but not the way you think. Who thinks of that at the age of, how old was I? 50? Was I 50 yet? I got my master's in 2006, right?
From Northwestern.
Northwestern.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went back later as okay. Yeah. But still, man, there's a big difference between, hey, I teach jazz and I've got a degree in teaching jazz, because now you can get a job as a professor look at these universities, Hart School of Music's a really good school, and I mean, so now you got professor tenure, benefits, all that stuff, pension. That's really smart.
I'd been teaching. I started teaching when I was 22 years old. I got a call from Jackie McLean, the great jazz saxophonist, right? He's played with Miles Davis and Sonny Rollins and was a colleague of those greats and is a great himself. He was the director of a program called, I think it was African American Music program at the University of Hartford. That was another way of saying jazz or black music program at University of Hartford. He started the program, developed it, and it's still a thriving program. As a matter of fact, I went back there last year and did a master class for the students under the auspices of the now director, Javon Jackson, the great saxophonist who has been there for, 5 to 10 years, I think. But in any case, so I was 22 years old. I get this message on my answering machine. Hey, Bobby, this is Jackie McLean. So, I had to rewind that. This is when the answering machine sent tape. And so I rewound that thing like 5 or 6 times because I couldn't believe that Jackie McLean was calling me. Like, really?
Yeah, but you just played with Sonny Rollins, man.
Yeah, but that's
the pinnacle, man.
Yeah, but everything that happens is the pinnacle.
Yeah, no, that's really, you're right.
Pinnacle to me, because once I played with Sonny Rollins, then that's over.
Yeah.
I can't walk. That doesn't pay my rent or mortgage. I can't. Yeah,
right. You can't. Right.
It's like you gotta do
next?
stuff. Yeah. And, you hear that the actor's syndrome of, they finish a big project, movie or television series, and then they're in a huge depression because they're like, what now? What, my career's over? What am I now?
Yeah.
So Jackie McLean calls me. He says, I got a job for you. I want you to come and do master classes for the kids twice a month. I'm like, master classes? What are you talking? I've never taught in my life. I'm still a student myself. I'm trying to learn how to play this music and the guitar. I don't know. What do you want me to do? He's like, first of all, you're doing what these students aspire to. And so just come in, be yourself, share your knowledge with them, give some private lessons, talk to a group of kids, and you'll be fine. And so he basically took me under his wing as far as that area of the field of jazz music is concerned, and gave me my start as an educator, and instilled in me the values that I keep today of sharing and just sharing your knowledge and your experience.
Man, what a good story.
That has grown over the years because I taught. So I did that for him for about 2 years. And he even asked me at one point, he pulls me aside in the hall. He said, Bobby, I want you to run the guitar program at the University of Hartford. I'm 22 years old.
Man, that's awesome.
I mean, he was speaking Greek to me. I said, Jackie, I can't do that. I don't even have my undergrad degree. I wouldn't know what to do. I had no knowledge of the system of academia, which I began to learn about until I pursued my master's degree. Then I began to understand that world. It's a whole nother world, academia. And so I declined his offer to run the guitar program. Had I done that, though, I may have been retired. I'm sure I'd still be playing, but I'd have a pension, coming whenever that happens,
But you wouldn't have 14 records. Not likely. Not likely, man. Because hunger is, a big engine driver, man.
Yes, it's a motivating factor for sure.
That it's hard. I was I did some real estate investing. One of the guys I studied with, he said, never buy a property when you have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. He said, always buy when you're broke, because you're gonna force a better deal to happen. And I always retain that. I think there's a lot of logic to that, And it's kind of like what you're talking about here. Reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Man, well, congratulations to you. You're a freaking hardworking guy, and I'm so glad that we're at where you're at, man. That's really cool.
Thank you.
What was it like opening for Steely Dan on such a long tour like that?
Well, it was a few different things come to mind. It was again a lot of hard work. I mean, unbelievable. We were pretty much autonomous as a group. We did get some help from them in that they transported our equipment.
Oh, that's great.
So all we had to do was gather our gear and put it in a certain place backstage at the end of the end of our performance, and their crew would pick it up and put it on the trucks and drive it to the next venue.
Wow!
And then it was just our responsibility to get to the next venue via car or airplane or whatever it required. But that was ultimately helpful to, to have.
Yeah. Not have to deal with cartage on top of everything else
but still a lot of work. And, we were playing 25, 30 minutes, which seems like, oh man, that's a piece of cake. But no, well, maybe it is, maybe it would be for some people, but if you know me and the way that I play, it's like all out, all the time, no matter when, where, and for how long. So if it's one song, I'm going to put everything into that one song. So 30 minutes, the intensity felt like an entire gig.
Yeah.
Was just shorter. And
which is exactly why Steely Dan picked you, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys incredibly exacting and can pick anybody.
Right.
And they're only picking, they're not even looking at anybody that's not like the top half of 1% of performers.
That's the incredible thing. Like, when I think about that, it's like, oh my goodness, they knew about me and liked my music well enough to do, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there's the hard work part. Then there's that part of the magic of being on the stage and opening for Steely Dan, looking at thousands of people every night and not getting booed off the stage, like so well received. That was incredible too. So I did that gig with two groups, with my first organ trio, which was the Deep Blue organ trio. We were together like 25 years or something. We started in the 90s playing, and we didn't really get serious in terms of like believing that we had something to offer in the field until about 1999. So we had played together for 10 years before we felt like, wait a minute, we're kind of good, let's make a record. Let's make a record.
Why is that?
So I think we were just in the beginning, we were just working musicians around Chicago, and we came across each other. We enjoyed playing together, and I would get called to do a gig. I would call these guys. One of them would get called to do a gig. They would call me. So we were either the Bobby Broom trio or we were the other guy's trio, or, depending on who got the gig.
Yeah.
So that's not like the same as forming a group and having an identity.
You guys are like three lawyers, man.
Yeah.
Pushing work to each other. That's
it went as need be. So we did that, and playing other people's music, or just what would you call that? Like one-offs or just gigging.
Yeah, sidemen.
Yeah, so we weren't really envisioning anything more, but as we matured and as time went on, as we played together more and developed more and more of the chemistry, it started to become apparent that there was something special there. And I remember the night we were playing at a local place that I used to play once a week, and sometimes on the weekends. And it's in town here in Evanston. One night we're playing, and again, these guys were like me. We played that little place like we were playing Carnegie Hall. Huh. And so we're playing this night, and it's intense, and it's, it's almost like I felt like we were levitating. It was so intense. And we finished the tune, blam! And do you know that audience was standing, giving us a standing ovation at a club down the street from where I live? That's not normal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For people that to give it up like that, So, and we felt it too. We felt like, man, now, like, whoa. That's when we said, wait a minute, man, we have something here. We need to focus and like, let's make a group for real. And I came up with the name, the Deep Blue Organ Trio. And next thing you know, like after that decision, we got a call to do a once a week gig at a prestigious jazz club here in town, the Green Mill Lounge. This place is 100 years old, got a huge reputation and following. And we got asked to do a regular night there. So, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
We decided to form a group. Then we got asked to do the gig. So now we're playing once a week. Now we're developing a following. Next call was Delmark Records here in Chicago wants you guys to record. That was a phone call that came through the Green Mill.
Man, well, when you're doing the right thing, the universe steps up, lets you know.
Yeah. So then it was, we recorded, and it went from there. We wound up making 4 records, and next call down the line, a few years down the line was from Steely Dan, or from a promoter here in Chicago. Steely Dan's opening at the Chicago Theater. Want you guys to do it. Great. So we did it. We're like, well, what is this? We're playing the Chicago Theater for thousands of people. They're going to boo us off the stage. But it wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. So we thought, that was that. We did that, and it was okay. Next, and then we started getting more calls. We want you to open. We want you to do 5. We've got 5 dates we want you to do. Then next, we want you to do 10 dates. And then finally, it was like, hey, can you do this tour?
That's great, man.
So we did that, and
you came here, man. You came to Ruth Eckerd Hall,
right?
Because I saw you. Yeah,
yeah.
I was at that show. Yeah,
and see, Ruth Eckerd Hall has a big, that's part of my past because like my parents lived not far from Tampa. When they retired, they moved down there. So, I mean, I spent 30 years going down there to visit. Yeah. And at some point, Sonny Rollins played Ruth Eckerd Hall. I wasn't in the band, but I went to see the gig there. And there were other people that, I saw other concerts at Ruth Eckerd Hall. So, yeah.
Good acoustics there. Nice. Good theater, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was that tour. And it was really difficult. I didn't know any better, so I did not hire a road manager. So as it turned out, I wound up being the guy that was doing with the responsibility of making sure we had transportation. How are we getting from A to B, point A to point B? That's huge.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Responsibility, and it was in every daily task. So not only were we playing, but I was doing that. It was difficult. And after that grueling tour, the band broke up.
What happened?
We just like, I don't know. We were just done. So it was a little bit of like a loss.
Bittersweet.
It was a loss. Yeah, it was a loss, like like you're losing a family member or something like that. I mean, we had been together for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I thought, man, I'm never going to have a group with chemistry like that. It's not an organ group, that's not going to happen again. And I remember talking to a good buddy of mine and him saying, oh, man, please, you're going to find some guys. There's some young guys out here that are dying to play with you.
Yeah.
You're going to just be cool. You'll play. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, So the following summer, the first tour we did with them, with Steely Dan, was 2013, right? Yeah. So 2014 summer, I get a call. We want you to open for Steely Dan again. And we want the Bobby Broom Trio. I'm like, well, wait a minute. the Bobby Broom Trio has acoustic bass and drums. So, and we just made a record, so this would be great. Great, record release tour opening for Steely Dan. This is, you couldn't ask for better. So I said, you sure you want the Bobby Broom Trio? They're like, yeah, that's what okay. So I called the guys, we're ready to go. The tour's in a month. Okay, cool. Then I get a call. No, we want organ.
Oh my God.
What? I said, I don't have an organ group anymore. We disbanded. So they're like, well, just put something together,
Well, plus you're wanting to promote your album, which is kind of, it's disappointing too, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm like, just put something together. Like, well, I said, of all people, and of course I'm talking to management. I'm not talking to Donald.
You guys are the last people that you audition 40 guitar players to play one solo, man.
Right. Donald and Walter, of all people, know that it's not that easy. The issue of personnel is not that easy. So I said, in some ways, I'm much like they are. I'm not just going to throw something together. I don't care how much money, potentially there is. So I wrote them a nice email and I thanked them for the offer and I declined. I said, I don't have an organ group, a working group, and I can't just put something together. So the guy the drummer that was playing in the trio at the time, Micaiah McCraven, gave me a call one day and he says, man, what are you thinking? I said, what do you mean, man? He's like, well, you got to do this tour. I said, well, I can't, man. I don't have a group. He's like, well, come on, man. We can think of somebody we can call on organ. I said, well, I've thought of people, but there's nobody that I feel like doing it with, And he's like, oh, man, come on. I'm coming over. We'll bring our books, our Rolodexes, our phone books, and we'll figure this out. I'm like, okay, fine. So we sat and we went through names and Ben Patterson's name came up. I didn't know Ben musically. I knew of him. I had seen him play a handful of times here in Chicago. He had moved to New York and we'd never played together. But when his name came up, something stirred in me for some unknown reason. And I said, you know what? That sounds like it could work. Why? I don't know. But I said, man, let me find his number. So I had to, find somebody that had his number, got it, called him. He's like, oh, man, I just happened to be in Chicago. I'm there. I'm here playing the blues festival. And as a matter of fact, my plan was just to hang out for a few weeks. I don't have anything going on. I'm just going to be hanging out in Chicago. I'm like, well, perfect. You want to do this tour? And we need to rehearse. So, while you're hanging out, we can rehearse. He's like, yeah, that sounds great. So we rehearse and we go on the road. And after a few weeks, I'm like, man, this feels great.
Now, is this a trio or did you still have your acoustic bass?
This is the organ
Just
trio.
Just a trio, okay.
And organ, and Micaiah was playing drums. And
is that the guy with the afro or big thick?
Yeah,
he's a badass. That guy, man.
Yeah, he's very popular right now, and so he played, and his wife was pregnant, so he's like, I can only do like a month, and then I got to go home and have my baby, and so I called the drummer that has played with me for 15 years, Kobe Watkins. He's made a bunch of records with me. I called Kobe, and that's no consolation prize. That's like, my top choices. So I called Kobe. He's like, oh man, that sounds great. I can do it. Only problem is my wife's pregnant. So I can only do a month. I'm like, really? Okay. I think this is going to work out scheduling wise because Micaiah the first month, you can do the second month. Then we got a couple weeks after that and Micaiah can come back. And that's exactly what happened. Everybody did their stint, went home, had their babies, came back.
That's wild, man. How weird is that you got two drummers and they're getting ready to have a baby in a month? That's really funny, man. It's fun. But that goes back, and I see this all the time, and I try to be more aware of it as I get older, because I think it's stuff I need to pay attention to. You call this guy, he's in town. That's not random.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That means this was all set up.
It was designed from a feeling that I got from hearing his name. Yeah. Come on, man.
But that's how it works. As long as you're open to that shit.
And see, that's what I'm obviously open to it, because I got the feeling and I responded to it.
Yeah.
Like what? And it worked. It was the right thing.
That's awesome, man.
Serve the purpose, like just, the immediate surface purpose of fulfilling this gig, doing this gig, making this money. But no, on some deeper level, these are the guys that fit.
Yeah.
And we sound great together, and we like playing with each other.
That's awesome.
You have a chemistry that's off the charts. Like, I couldn't believe it when I realized, wait a minute, I said this wasn't going to happen again in my life. And, here it is. This chemistry is unbelievable. Yeah.
And what's cool is that it was initiated by a third party.
Right.
You didn't even, right? So that, I always, I'm amazed at that. I always look at this, and it's because I hear all these stories, and it just amazes me, because, the things you can't statistically make all this shit happen. It's
exactly. So there's hard work, but some of it is like not luck, but something,
serendipity, universe, something.
There's no reason logical. There's no reason other than by design that I should have been playing with Sonny Rollins or playing with Al Haig. People that played, Al Haig and Walter Bishop Jr. were pianists that played on Charlie Parker records. Like, I'm 15, I'm 16 years old. What am I doing playing with those people? Like, really? Am I that good? No, I wasn't that good. I was good. I had something.
You had something.
I had something that was attractive to them.
Right.
My love of the music, my earnest desire to be involved and to learn and to experience this music it must have been so attractive to them. I know how I am when I see a youngster now, 14, 15, 16 years old, that's like got it and is figuring it out. Man, it just makes me feel so good. I just want to give them a hug, you know?
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I'm sure that was the effect that I had on these guys. But still, to be in the right place at the right time for those kinds of things to happen. I mean, that introduction to Sonny Rollins was very much the same. Like, I had a professional job playing in an off Broadway play in Brooklyn.
At 16?
At 16.
Holy crap.
Yeah, 16. At the Billie Holiday Theater.
That was back in the day. That's so funny because we would think nothing of hopping on the trains at any time from Bronx to Brooklyn, Bronx to Manhattan, Manhattan to Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Isn't it? Right. That's so, because people say, how did you do that? I'm like, man, you just got on.
Yeah, that's how
wasn't it dangerous? I guess, but
it was before dangerous. Or wasn't it dangerous?
No, it was dangerous in the 70s. That was the worst, man.
No, man, I didn't feel that way.
Right, you just do it.
Yeah. No,
I got to get somewhere. What's my options?
Never had anything happen. I'm walking around with a guitar. Never had anything happen. But so I'm in high school doing my high school talent show, and there's this guy backstage, an older guy, older in quotes, he had a bald head. He was all of 35.
Right.
But we thought, who's this old man back here lurking around?
Right.
And it was Weldon Irvine. Weldon Irvine was the musical director for Nina Simone. had written tunes that Freddie Hubbard played. And we didn't know that. We're like, who's this old guy lurking around? And so after we played, my little band played for the talent show, and he approached us and he's like, I just wrote this play. My name is Weldon Irvine. I've done this, that, and the other. I wrote a play. It's called Young, Gifted, and Broke. And I'm looking for young musicians to play roles in this play. And also, if you're good enough, to play in the pit, play the music for the show. I want you to come audition. So he picked 3 of us, the keyboard player, drummer, and myself. So we go out to the Billie Holiday Theater and audition. We get it. And now we're playing 5 nights a week, matinee on Saturday and Sunday.
And going to high school. You're like, what, a sophomore or a junior, right?
Junior in high school. Senior in high school. I
got to tell you, man, Nina's, maybe more than anybody else, is the most intense for me. I remember when I turned my son onto her. He likes the same music. And when she passed, he called me up, or he came into my room because he was living at home back then. He was hysterical crying because he felt the same way, man. Her music. I mean, I saw the movie. I know she was crazy, but.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe there was some issues, but I don't think she was crazy.
She had mental illness, put it that way.
Yeah. And I think some of that was, I mean, I don't know, but she was an incredible artist with an incredible story.
Yeah.
And about perseverance and adapting, from wanting to be a classical pianist to becoming this iconic, I don't know if you would even call it jazz. I mean, it's
soul,
black music, right? And an activist, and oh man, she's actually one of my absolute favorite artists.
Her music was just lyrics, the music, it was just so deep. Sorry, man, I didn't want to.
That time, my mom had some Nina Simone in her record collection, but I never really paid attention to it. I knew who Nina Simone was from the name, but I knew the tune Young, Gifted, and Black, from her version of it, her radio hit. So when Weldon Irvine told me that he wrote the lyrics or co-wrote the lyrics, or he had something to do with that song. I don't remember if it was the lyrics or the music, but he had something to do with the co-writing that tune. So I'm like, wow, this guy's a professional. Like, of course I'm going to go do this audition. So we got the job, and now we're professional musicians at 16. So as a result of that, one night, because we had my high school band guys, and I had roles where we would go on stage and play, the part of family members. And then we were rehearsing in our living room. We had the set of the living room, and we're rehearsing a tune. And so everybody plays for the audience, So I had my little solo and everything. And I remember just learning to play through chord changes on that job. Because at the beginning of the play, I wasn't really there. But by the end of the 9 months, that play ran for 9 months and almost went to off-Broadway. It was a very good production, very, very, very popular. At the end of the 9-month run, I had figured it out, and I could play. And I remember going back up to the pit after going on stage this particular night and getting a pound from all the guys cheering me on, like, you got it, man, you got it, you can finally play. So one night after the show, a gentleman comes up to me and introduces himself as Sonny Rollins' guitar player. And he's talking to me. He's like, you sound really good. And my name is R.L. Ray. And I play guitar with Sonny Rollins and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, really? So you play guitar with Sonny Rollins? Wow, that's cool. And we're talking. And he says, so I want you to go to this address. He has it written down. And I want you to audition for Sonny Rollins. I said, well, wait a minute. You just said you're the guitar player for Sonny. He's like, I know, but Sonny's going to be looking for somebody. Go do this. I said, okay. So I tell my parents, hey, this guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go do. I go to this rehearsal studio in Manhattan. I sit there in the waiting room. Sonny comes out, brings me in the room. It's Bob Cranshaw on bass and Eddie Moore on drums, Sonny and myself. And we play. He says, can you read chord changes? Yeah. Okay, let's play some tunes. Okay, so we play. And he says, okay, go out in the waiting room and wait for a few minutes and I'll be out. And so I go sit out there and he comes out and he says, you sound good. And would you like to do a tour? I'm getting ready to do a tour of a bunch of college dates. Would you like to do it? And I said, well, I'd love to do it, but the only problem is I can't because I'm in high school.
Holy.
I gotta graduate. My parents are going to kick my butt.
So hold on one second, man. What's going through your mind? Like, you've got to be like,
nope,
out of body experience or something.
It's just like, I was told to go to this address. I'm going to go play music. I'm not really nervous because they wouldn't have asked me. I wouldn't have been told to do it if I couldn't do it.
Sure.
So it wasn't about that. It was just like, and it wasn't cocky either. It was just like a very zen.
Yeah.
Be here now, like that's how I was. And so I went in the room. I said hello to all the guys. They were looking at me like, who is this kid? He's like, looks like he's 12. He's so cute. He's getting out.
But when Sonny's talking to you at the end there, though, how, like,
I'm just like, hey, wow, thank you. But, I'm in high school. I can't. So he says, oh, yeah, right. Of course. I'm sorry. So he says, well, I understand. I'll give you a call when we get back off the road, I'll give you a call. So I'm like, okay, great. I was like, it was so great to play with you or whatever I said, I wasn't thinking of anything other than the fact that I was there. I had played with Sonny Rollins. I had fun. I wasn't scared. I just played the best I could. It was not like I wasn't judging myself at all. It was just what it was. Having an experience. I was so into just having experiences and being in the moment. And that's what it was. And so when he said, I'll give you a call, I thought nothing of it. I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought he meant to say hello or, just check in and see how I was doing. Right. I didn't know, so wow. Several months later, I'm listening to jazz radio, WRVR, and in the morning before school, and an ad comes on. January 16th, Sonny Rollins at Carnegie Hall with special guest Donald Byrd on trumpet, blah, 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 blah. Get your tickets. Blah. And I get all excited and I call Mommy. Sonny Rollins is playing at Carnegie Hall and we can go. I bet we can go because I know Sonny Rollins now. And, we can probably get backstage. And, so this is what I'm thinking. That night I'm sitting doing my homework and the phone rings. And my mom comes to my door and she says, the telephone, it's for you. And I said, well, I can't talk right now. I'm in the middle of my homework. And then after I finish my homework, I got to practice. So she says, no, I think you're going to want to get this call. It's Sonny Rollins. I said, oh, wow, what? So I get on the phone and he says, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm fine. How are you? How was the tour? He says, so I'm playing, I'm calling to find out if you're available to play with me. I said, he says, at Carnegie Hall on the such and such date. I'm like, oh, of course, of course I am. So he's like, okay, we're going to rehearse these dates and blah, blah, blah. You come to this place and what? So I hang up the phone and I'm sure I'm jumping up and down and, with my mom and dad, and unreal. A year before these things started happening, mind you, so around the same time, I had been going to a club on the east side called Gregory's, playing with Al Haig, sitting in, quote, with Al Haig for 3-4 nights a week, every week.
Charlie Parker's pianist.
That's Charlie Parker's piano player. So that happened as well from the guidance tutoring of Weldon Irvine, who one night after the play says, Bobby, get your coat. We're going to go out. We're going to go sit in somewhere. I'm like, okay. He says, call your mom. So I go to a payphone. I go to the payphone and I call my mom, or maybe the office in the Billie Holiday Theater. And I call my mom and I say, Mom, Weldon is going to take me out to some place. We're going to go sit in. She said, what's that? I said, I don't know, but I'll tell you when I go. So I'm like, okay. She's like, okay, be home by such and such. I'm like, okay. So we go to some club and I see on the marquee outside the Al Haig Trio. I'm like, wait a minute, Al Haig, I know him. I know who he is. He played with Charlie Parker. Weldon's like, yeah. So we go in this place. Weldon has his melodica, right?
What is that?
It's a keyboard that you blow through the little air tube.
Yeah, okay.
And you play the keyboard and it sounds kind of like an accordion / harmonica / I don't know what, And so he's planning to sit in on the melodica and I'm going to sit in on the guitar, right? So he goes and talks to Al Haig and he comes back to the table and I said, what did he say? He says, well, he said no to the melodica, but he said you could play. What? The kid can play. Okay. What? All right. So I go up to the stage. This is what, do you know, I don't know, How High the Moon or whatever song he called. I said, yeah. So we played. So afterwards he says, you sound good. I do this gig 4 nights a week at a club on the east side called Gregory's. Where do you live? I said, I live in Manhattan on the west side, Upper West Side, 95th. He's like, okay, well, you could probably get over there then. You're welcome to come. I'm there Tuesday through Friday or whatever. You're welcome to come anytime. Oh, shoot. Open invitation?
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm there 3-4 nights a week. I had a curfew of midnight. I would get on the crosstown bus and then maybe get another bus or a taxi and go down there and then get in a cab at like 11:40, make sure I was home by midnight. And
wow.
It's crazy. So I'm like, what, playing with Charlie Parker, people that played with Charlie Parker. A year before that, I was all forlorn because I had the realization that I was born a generation or two too late. Like when it dawned on me that I really wanted to do this, I really wanted to be a jazz musician. I wanted to be involved with jazz music to the extent of like it being my livelihood, and I wanted to be involved with the people that I was idolizing on these records. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute, that's not going to happen because you're looking at records that were made from the 1940s through the 1960s. It's over, dude. You're too late. You missed it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Well, I don't care. I just love jazz so much. I'm going to practice, and I just want to learn how to play. If there's a club called the Jazz Club, I want to be a member. And then the following year, this stuff started happening.
Wow. Man, that is like a really nice, really heartwarming and exciting story. I got a few questions for you. Guitar wise, what were you playing back then?
Okay, so the first guitars I had a nylon string classical style guitar. That was the first guitar my dad bought me. And then, he knew I needed an electric guitar, so he got me a Univox, solid body guitar. And I was must have been in the 6th grade. I was 12. And yeah.
Is that what you were playing when you went down to play with Sonny and Al Haig?
I had graduated up a couple of guitars after a couple of years. So 12, by about 14 or so, my dad realized that I was serious. I was taking lessons. I had been playing regularly. So he bought me a Les Paul.
Okay, so
I had that. And then, as I then from 14 to 16 realized that jazz was going to be my focus, and that the sound and style that I was interested in was, played on these hollow body electric guitars. So I went to 48th Street, the music.
I know that doesn't even exist, bro.
No,
there's nothing there. Zero.
Mecca, like a mall, an outdoor mall of music stores, right? So I went down there. And, I told my dad, I'd like to trade in my Les Paul and get a hollow body. He's like, sure, whatever. So I went down to 48th Street and traded my Les Paul for an Ibanez L5 copy. And that's what I played for years. That's what I did my first record with. All the stuff I did. That.
You must have really been a special kid to have the kind of, like, when your mom said, hey, you got a phone call, and you said, well, I can't talk to anybody right now, I've got to finish my homework and I got to practice.
Right.
What I mean special in like a really incredibly admirable way, because that level of focus doesn't exist for most adults. Right? Let alone for a 16-year-old kid. Where the hell did that come from?
My intense love for music, my Capricorn nature. That's it. I was on a mission, especially by that point, because I had played for a few years, not really knowing what I was doing, kind of just eking out some kind of musical output however I could. I had learned certain things from my teachers, but it hadn't come together by any means. I didn't know all of my scale fingerings. I couldn't play the guitar fluently all over the neck. I was just like noodling in a spot, and then I'd move up somewhere and noodle some more. And I knew it. I had taken enough music theory classes. I took, even in junior high school when I first started to play. So talk about special. When I started playing guitar at 12, so then 13, I was in junior high school. I was, I knew I wanted to play guitar. So I thought, oh, there's a music theory elective class after school at my junior high school. I need to take that class because I need to understand me. Like, who does that? Who thinks that?
Nobody.
14.
No one. No one.
So yeah, that's who I was. So that's what I did. So I had taken that music theory class. Then when I got to high school, it was a requirement to take music theory as a music major at the High School of Music and Art. So I knew music theory, but I didn't know how to play the guitar, and I knew it. So when I started to get the information that I knew I needed, like in the backs of magazines, like the back of Downbeat had how to play 5 major scale fingerings for the guitar. Oh my God, that's it right there. Because if Western music is built upon the system of the major scale, everything else comes from it. So it stands to reason in my mind, if there are 5 major scale fingerings that span the 12 frets, then that means there are 5 scale fingerings. Every other scale, there are 5 fingerings that span the 12 frets. And that's exactly what I need to be able to do, to play across the neck and play music, which is scales and arpeggios and chords. So the answer is right here, and I'm going to figure it out. And that's when I stopped going outside to play with friends after school, stopped playing basketball. That's the day, that's the period where I got to get my homework done so I can practice.
The other thing that's amazing is behaviorally, I can't believe how mature you are. Like, you're hanging out in bars and you're like, oh, I got to make sure I'm home. Mom and dad say get home by 12. You know, the normal kid would be like, man, I'm hanging with these guys. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to do an extra set. No, you're so responsible.
My mission was music. My mission was do the right thing so I could continue to go every night.
That's not a normal, to honor that request is not a normal teenager like behavior though.
Well, it was certainly normal for me. I mean, but it's funny that you say how mature I was, because that's exactly how I was. And that's exactly how my parents viewed me. So when I was mature, but I was not worldly, or I was not, I was green.
You're 16.
I was a robot, but I was green. So when time came, for me, I went to college. I went to Berklee School of Music. And after that first year, or during that first year at some point, I realized, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. First of all, I'm looking at my friends back in New York that are now making records. They're doing records. And what am I doing at school? I'm playing with the teachers, and I'm thriving, I'm learning, but I could learn in New York, and I could have the opportunity to play, alongside my peers and maybe make records like they're doing, So I need to find my way back to New York. So I told my parents, I don't want to go back to Boston. I want to find a school in New York so I could be in New York. So they're like, okay, well, that puts a damper on our plans, because we're planning to retire and move to Florida, move to Plant City.
Right.
And, we're building a house. And so, you're jacking the schedule up. You want to come back to New York.
Were you an only child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm like, I'm really sorry, but, so they're like, okay, well, you got 2 options. You can live with your aunt, or you can keep the apartment, because you're a mature young man. Yeah. You're a mature young man. We know you're mature and you can handle this, right? I'm like, yeah, I can handle it. Okay. So this is it. And that's when my maturity went out the window, because of life, temptations, women, and life experiences, and no regulation, nobody to come home to and answer to.
So you were really respectful of that governor of your parents. Incredibly respectful.
Incredibly, until they left.
But you must have had a great relationship with them to be that. And they must have been very, very involved and good with you for you to have that at such a young age.
Oh, yes.
That's wonderful, man.
The best parents in the world, man.
That's great.
Really, I don't want to get sad, because my mom just passed 9 months ago.
Man, I'm so sorry, Bobby.
Really yeah, but she lived to be 96, so come on.
Oh, but still doesn't mean you're less sad, man. I'm sorry, man.
I can't live forever, but but man, so super involved. Anything I wanted to do within reason. I remember when I became enamored with jazz, and it meant for me amassing a record collection, because that was how I was gonna ingest my music. I needed my musical input
in library, man. Yeah.
Yes, I needed to hear music to become aware of jazz, and the only way I knew how was through records, and so that meant I needed to have a record or two every week. So my dad was giving me $5, and I'd run out and get a record.
Where did you go? Where'd you used to go?
It was a store on 96th and Broadway. Okay. I don't remember the name of it. It was a little independent record store.
There was so many little spots like that back then.
And it was just crazy. It was, yeah. So it's like websites,
It was. I know. Yeah. And they all specialized, this guy would specialize in, this, and, 6 blocks away, they'd have this.
Or the guy in there would know a little bit about every kind of music.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he'd know the new releases, what was out. He'd know classic stuff. So that's where I went to get my records, 96th Street and Broadway. And I was going there at least once a week, usually once a week, because I get my allowance on Saturday. And I say, Dad, can I have $5? And sometimes he'd give me 10. And that meant, oh man, I could get 2 records this week. Yeah. So I was doing that on a weekly basis. So at some point, it was probably before or right around the time that I started this habit. When I realized I wanted to be a jazz musician was because of hearing Herbie Hancock and Grover Washington on the radio. When I heard Headhunters, when I heard Chameleon and Mr. Magic, it was like the light switch went on. Even though my teacher was a jazz player and had been teaching me through jazz music and pop music, I hadn't been bitten by the bug yet. He was telling me, you need to listen to Wes Montgomery, and I'd nod my head like, yeah, okay. And then I would go home and listen to Kool and the Gang and Earth, Wind and Fire. My music, I wasn't trying to listen to it, as I wasn't interested. I wasn't that interested. I was interested in my teacher and everything that he was telling me and the songs that we played. But that was where it ended. So I heard the stuff on the radio, Mr. Magic and Herbie, and I'm like, man, this is funky. I like this. This is, and the solos are cool. And oh, this is jazz? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I do like jazz. So I said, but who does jazz like this on the guitar? So I went to the record store and I asked the guy, I said, who plays jazz like Herbie Hancock and Grover Washington, but on guitar? And he turns around, he goes to the stack, and he pulls out a record and he turns around with it. I just went down to my basement a few minutes ago and grabbed it and had a little moment of, it was George Benson's Bad Benson. And I looked at the cover and I'm like, man, that cover is cool. Look at him. It's a black leather jacket in it. So I go home and put this thing on and it blew my mind. Like, I didn't know guitar could be played like that, with that kind of freedom. And listen to all these different melodies he's able to play seemingly at will. And I mean, it's like, wow, if that's how you can play guitar, that's how I want to do it. That's what I like. So that was the moment. And that's when I started, doing research. That was my research period. And so then I'm reading the backs of records. I'm reading every magazine and book I can find. And, the predecessors to George Benson or Wes Montgomery, that's like one of his biggest. Oh, Wes Montgomery. Oh, my teacher's been telling me, oh man, well, I got to go. So then my cousin had a Wes Montgomery record in our collection. And I grabbed that and I'm like, okay, I get it. Immediately, it was like, I get it. I hear it. It makes absolute sense. So, yeah.
You ever go down to, I used to love, it was way down by City Hall, man. It was J&R. They had a huge jazz selection there. They had like a separate store. It was just like jazz and classical.
I remember J&R, and I probably was in there, but I think that... I don't remember the chronology, but I think J&R was kind of after my big record collecting push, but I do remember it. Yeah.
And it was just way out of the way. But that was, you could find a new record sometimes for $2.99. Like, it would be great, that would be like a score. Or I used to go to the Village and all the used record stores and like get 10 of them for $5 with used,
Oh, man, I wasn't that savvy, but
I was.
Yeah. That's so cool. So cool. What an experience, I mean, the actually having to actually physically go and then stand there among the rows and rows of records and try to figure out, not based on anything that, someone has written, no internet, just kind of connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, look at the back of this record. It's these people. Well, these guys played with such and such. So this record must be good. This guy, whoever this new artist is, must be good if these guys are playing with him, so I think I'm going to get this, and so I can only get 2, but I'm looking like at hundreds of records.
Right. And then sometimes you make a decision on a producer. You say, well, like I remember seeing some Allman Brothers record, and I knew that Tom Dowd had produced somebody else that I like. Man, I said, this must be pretty good because this guy Tom Dowd was stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you standing there for 2 or 3 hours to make, purchase 2 records.
Right. But it was fun, man. It was education, right?
So much fun.
Hey, man, what prompted you to move to Chicago? And like, what are the biggest differences between Chicago and New York?
Well, what prompted me was a couple of things. So after all this very auspicious music career beginning, playing with a bunch of people, getting a record deal at 20 years old, making my first record, playing with Sonny Rollins. And, because after I made my first record, I got a call from Sonny again. The Carnegie Hall thing was just a one-time thing. And then, I went to college and the whole thing. And I remember wanting nothing more than to be in Sonny's band, like really like a regular member of his band. And remember, he came to Berkeley Performance Center and I went to the concert. And I was sitting there, and first of all, the way he was playing, like the music was so intense that I remember like holding on to the arms of my chair, like, man, be cool, Sonny. Like, don't hurt yourself, or you're gonna, like it was that intense. And then the other feelings I had were just like mournful. Like, man, I wish I was playing like. It was Donald Byrd also, and then Ron Carter, who was kind of a family friend of sorts. His son used to play in our kids band, in our little high school band. His son, Ron Jr., played trumpet. And so Ron Carter was playing, and the rest of the guys I didn't know, McCoy Tyner and Al Foster, who I later wound up playing with Sonny. But anyway, so I'm watching these guys and I'm pining like, man, I wish I could play with Sonny again. I really want to be a member of his band. And I had to leave the concert for a few minutes and go back to my dorm room and kind of get myself together, because I knew I wanted to go backstage and say hi to Sonny. And, I wanted to be in the right spirit. So I went and cooled out, and then went back to the show, watched the rest, and then I went backstage. So anyway, a year later, I did my album and then got a call from Sonny and, wanted me to join the band. And so that was a victory. And then
that must have been tremendously rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was as a result of him hearing my record. Or no, it was a result of him seeing an ad for my record in the New York Times.
Wow.
That's awesome. Read the New York Times and he sees an ad and he goes, Bobby Broom, wow, wait, wow.
That's the kid.
I gave this kid a start,
Yeah.
I don't know if he went and back and listened to the record or what, but he gave me a call, and yeah. So at some point there was the inevitable lull that all of us artists have to learn to deal with, where nothing's happening at the moment. This was a new experience for me. There was something was always happening.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden nothing was happening. And so that was frightening. At the same time, I met somebody, because I was doing random gigs with Sonny, and I know we had gone to Chicago and played a gig, and I met a woman, and we started dating long distance, and it was after that, I think, that this lull hit, and I freaked, and I'm like, man, I need to go back to school. I need to get my degree. It's because, man, I need something to fall back on. I could hear my father's words.
Yeah. You were still in your folks' apartment?
In the apartment,
right.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I need to maybe if I find a program, an undergrad program in Chicago, then I can hang out with this girl and finish school and not look like an idiot for leaving New York.
Right. God, you got a lot of shit going on there, man.
About it, man.
That's too much to process.
That's what I did.
Yeah, okay.
I found what I thought was the perfect program, because the other thing that was happening was that I was in the middle of a music business crisis for me, where, I had a record that it was supposed to be being released, and it wasn't being released because the label that I was on, GRP, which was an independent label that was distributed by Arista Records, GRP had decided that they wanted to form a full-fledged label where they had their own distribution. And so that meant putting a lot of projects on hold, and mine being one of them. And so now my release is on hold, and I don't understand any of this. I don't understand what's happening. There's a lull happening in my gigging, my career and my gigging, and I'm freaking out. I need to go back to school, and I'm dating this woman, and all the stars aligned, where it was like I found a program called the Arts, Entertainment, and Media Management program at Columbia College in Chicago. Arts, Entertainment, and Media Management. Wow. That sounds like music business, and that's exactly what I want to understand. And I can take music classes too, and, I can finish my degree. I got about 2 years and change that I need of credits, and I can do it. And that's what I'll do. So that's what I did.
It's so great.
Who moves from New York? A musician. It moves from New York.
No, I totally get it, man. When there's a woman involved, you needed to come up with the rationalization to get with this woman so that you could logically process it. That's good, man. I get it.
Yeah, that's what it was. Oh,
you just don't want to be like, I just can't go to Chicago for a woman. But wait, I guess I can if I figure out a reason good enough. And then, oh man, that's classic.
Yeah. Cats that that I like. I'd go back and do gigs with Sonny, or I was playing with Stanley Turrentine, and they would all tease me. So you moved to Chicago, man? It's cold there, huh? What are you doing, man? I know why he moved.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Without even having to be told anything, they knew what it was.
Yeah, man.
Oh man.
Hey, a few questions. Well, first, I just want to tell everybody listening that the high school Bobby went to, High School of Music and Art, it's like a top high school for music in the country. It's the movie Fame, like 100 years ago, when that was made about music and art. It was great school. And a question for you: when you went to Carnegie Hall, I actually played there with Bronx Borough. We had a sign in. Did you do that? That big giant book?
Not that I remember.
Maybe because I was.
Maybe I did, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was. It was just like one of those things you see it in Washington. It's just this massive, like 6 times the size of a phone book, and you had a sign. That's all I remember about it. Of course, the acoustics. I remember checking that out. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Man, let's talk about your new record, Soul Fingers. I loved it. It's really great, man. And I wanted to talk to you about a few questions. And it's funny. My first question was, you guys sound incredibly tight, and the drummer's really holding down the bottom. How long have you guys played together? And you answered that, because I'm like, man, these guys, like, this is 10 years here or something like that. And I didn't think it was, but you're like, you got some magic here, man, for sure.
With the drummer, like I said, Kobe and I have played together for 15 years, and in more recent years on and off, but we really established a connection because he's from Chicago. And I had my regular once a week study at Pete Miller's, which is a place here in Evanston. And that experience, that gig was a great thing in terms of my development of the group, of the Bobby Broom Trio. We were able to hone our chemistry, develop a way of playing together. I really crystallized my vision of how I wanted to present myself via that group. I began to explore the material that I had always dreamed of exploring. Well, not always, but maybe by the 1990s, I started to get this idea that it would be cool to record pop songs from my childhood, because there were some really substantive songs, and nobody was, well, not nobody, but they weren't part of the jazz lexicon. They weren't part of the jazz repertoire, and I felt that they could be, and it would be a nostalgia trip and a great way for me to celebrate the music that I love and celebrate my childhood, to play these songs. But I thought, I can't pull that off. I mean, I'm not good enough. I can't.
Whoa, that's a change of thought process for you. To sit and say that's not usually what you're thinking.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, that I'm not. You're usually, from what you've said, you're usually not cocky, but you're usually comfortable and confident in your willingness. This is the first time I've heard you say something like that.
Well, in the way that I didn't even, okay, so when I'm thinking now of the daydream of one day playing material from my youth, I didn't even really have a career in my mind as a jazz guitarist. This was a real dormant period for me.
Interesting. Okay.
This was in the early 90s. After I had moved to Chicago in 84, I adjusted to that in about a year and found myself working a lot, playing as a sideman around town here, but then also getting the same kinds of calls that I had gotten in New York to play as a sideman on the road with people. I was going to Japan often, and playing around the States with different people, with Sonny, with Stanley Turrentine, with different people. And okay, so that was fine, and that lasted up until about 1990 or so. I wound up playing with Charles Earland in the late 80s, who was another hero of mine. And in fact, that Charles Earland had a record called Black Talk that he released in 1971, I believe. So I'm 10 years old, and that record was the first jazz record that I was attracted to. I grabbed it from my dad's collection. He brought it home one night from the barber shop. I went through the stack, like, what did you get? And that record, I looked at it and it had Age of Aquarius and More Today Than Yesterday. I'm like, I know those songs. Those are pop songs from the radio. And so that prompted me to put the record on. And, you know, I didn't know what to expect. And I'm like, oh, man, organ? Like, what's this? And then the feeling was so it would just sucked me right in, you know. And man, I used to play that record every day, literally every day. I loved that record. I didn't know that it was jazz. I didn't think about it. It was just good music. I loved it.
It's Black Talk by Charles
Earland. Earland.
Thanks.
So now that probably planted a seed in my mind about playing pop songs. You know, that and other, you know, there are other, you know, this is not a new thing that I'm doing. Like jazz musicians have done this from the beginning. Played folk music. They played popular songs and just interpreted them in their way. You know, in the way of jazz music, you know, instrumentally and with the flair and personality, personal personality and the jazz flair, you know, that was common to the music. So, but at that point, it was just, hey, you know, I like this record. And then fast forward back to the 90s, I'm like, at the beginning of the 90s, I had finished up school. I was teaching at the American Conservatory of Music. I was bouncing around doing various sideman gigs around town, mostly here in Chicago. I might get the every now and then I'd get a call to do something major, but you know, the months on end of not happening were starting to weigh on me.
Yeah.
And I was starting to feel, you know, I'd gotten married. I had a daughter.
To the same woman that was the woman you moved out there for?
Yes.
Oh, that's good, dude. The story worked out. That's good.
Well, no, it didn't, but.
Oh, that was your first wife.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
That's a trial, man.
Ultimately, but not with her.
Yeah.
I was starting to feel trapped. I remember telling telling Dennis Carroll, my bass player, this story, and he really thought this was poignant. I was living, and we were renting a house. My daughter was like 1 or 2, and I was really feeling, you know, I'm teaching at this American Conservatory of Music and feeling uncomfortable. I was 20, still like I'm 29 years old. And I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I'm not comfortable as a professor. I don't feel confident in myself enough to assume the role where I'm doing it, but I don't feel comfortable. I haven't assumed the role of teacher, mentor, elder. I'm not an elder. I'm like a little bit older than most of my students. Right. I'm teaching them, I'm sharing, I'm giving them what I know, but inside I'm not feeling it. And I want to play. I want to be a player. And I'm not involved in the Young Lions, the movement of the Young Lions in jazz, you know, stemming from Wynton Marsalis and then Terrence Blanchard and Donald Harrison, and now these new guitar players that are coming out, Russell Malone and Mark Whitfield and these guys. That's supposed to be me in New York, making these records with these guys and being a part of this movement of people of my generation. And I'm not there. And I'm, you know, doing these gigs in and around Chicago, and I'm teaching at this place and being uncomfortable. And now I've got a daughter and family responsibilities. And I went to the newsstand at the local grocery store, and I'm looking at downbeat magazines, and I'm just feeling like this is why Sonny Rollins, the first day I met him, told me don't read downbeat magazine because you're not in there and you're seeing all this stuff in your face and it's hurtful. That's where I was in the early 90s.
Yeah, and I think anybody, I've been there, man. Anybody who owns a business has been there. I mean, and it's terrible. And being a young kid, and I say young kid because I'm old now, we're old now. You realize at 29, who the hell likes themselves in their skin? That's normal. Nobody, like with rare exception anyway. But it's tough to go through that, man. You know, I feel you on that, man.
I was alone. I was by myself in those feelings.
Yeah.
There's nobody to share those feelings with.
No.
You know, not at all. And
that family responsibility is for me. I felt that was heavy shit. That was like, that was
when you're dealing with somebody that makes it feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's not really, I won't go there, but I'll go here. My current wife of 23 years is a godsend. She's the most supportive, loving, encouraging person I've ever met, and is perfect for me.
Right. Congratulations. That's good, man.
For the fuel for my life and my career. She allows me to do what I need to do. So that's these good, 14 records, or minus the 2 that were made when I was in New York, these 12 records that I've made have been because of her love and care.
That's awesome, man.
The fact that I feel like I can produce, like I feel productive. I feel like, I can go out here and make statements about who I am as a musician because I feel comfortable at home.
Yeah.
That shit is important.
It's so important, man. And life is tough.
It's unbelievable how important that is. Yeah. If you're feeling like you're not worthy, or like you're not adequate, or if you're feeling those things, how are you going to have the confidence to make something of yourself? You got to be super, and then, or you got to shut some stuff down.
Yeah.
So
good for you, man.
Eventually the mid-90s roll around. I get a great opportunity to play with Dr. John. I didn't really know much about who he was other than I was in the right place. Must have been the wrong time. Yeah. I knew that song, but I didn't know he was an iconic New Orleans musician with that New Orleans had this rich musical history dating back to jazz. Yes. And then through R&B music, and really they were among the inventors of R&B music. And so I had to learn all of this, and it was a great learning experience and a great gig to have. I kept it for 6 years.
Wow. That's a long, he goes all over, doesn't he?
He worked like 200 shows a year at least.
Wow.
Always on the road. And so 6 years, yes, that was a long time. 93 to 99. But perfect, because remember where I was.
Yeah, it got you right out of it. It gave you exactly what you needed.
Exactly. I needed to feel like a productive musician member of society, which is exactly what happened. Yeah. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for him.
And I've talked to a couple of guys that played with him, and they were so complimentary of working with him as a human being and as a musician, and just the way he treated people.
Who were they?
I think a guy, I could tell you exactly. I think Will Bernard. Do you know him from New York?
Oh yeah, I know who he is, but
I'll tell you right now.
Is he a guitar? He's a guitar player.
Yes, these are guitar guys. I'll tell you who else.
I didn't know he played with Mac.
Christine Ullman played with him. Do you know her?
No.
Brian Lucy, he's an engineer, a mastering engineer. Jamie Kime out of LA. Do you know him?
No.
Jamie Kime played with him. I think that wasn't Will Bernard. I think it was Jamie Kime who told me that. He was so complimentary. He was, and it was funny. Yeah. He was working with him at kind of like a similar point in time of his life when he was like, shit wasn't happening for him. And, he hooked up with Mac, and then all of a sudden, felt like you said, what his run wasn't anywhere near as long as yours.
Yeah, it was crazy because after a couple of gigs, I felt like this isn't the right gig for me musically. Like, this is really a blues and rock gig, mm-hmm. and I'm not a blues and rock guitar player. So I don't know if this is going to work. So I remember going to Mac's room and saying, hey man, I understand if you're not feeling what I'm doing as a guitar player for your music. And, it makes sense to me. If it's not right, just let me know. I'm cool. I get it. And he's like, man, what are you talking about? Don't worry about it. You sound great. I'll let you know if there's any problem. So
that's 6 nice, years. Man.
Because Dr. John Malcolm, Mac was a guitar player initially before he started playing piano.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a guitar player, like a session guitar player in New Orleans.
Wow.
Like yes. And he was a jazz lover. So he told me that he used to go see George Benson. This is how he met Ronnie Cuber, the baritone player, who got me the gig, who recommended me rather for the gig. And I used to play with Ronnie Cuber back in New York as a kid, basically. I was 19 or so in Ronnie's band. But Ronnie used to play in George Benson's first quartet, the one that he made his first records with. And Dr. John used to go hear George Benson because he was an admirer of George and his guitar playing. So George was so Mac was a jazz guitar fan. So, there was something about me that he liked.
Yeah. That's great, man. And Jamie said he had like he was like a pretty deep cat. Like he had a lot of, I don't know, I think the story said something like, he was trying to get something done and he couldn't get it. And then Max said, well, maybe you need to try less or something, like he had these like,
like definitely. Yeah.
Like Buddha or Yoda.
And a wise man. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's been through a lot in his life, So yeah. Hopefully you come out of the other end of that with some understanding of things, But yeah, so that was a super helpful time, got me moving again. And then at the end of that was when I said, okay, wait a minute. What about my jazz career? What about me as a jazz guitar player? First of all, I have no real body of work to speak of, and I'm not known as a jazz player. The media, if you want to call it that, the jazz cognoscenti or whatever, have labeled me as some well-rounded or some kind of guitarist that plays funky blues. And I wasn't known as a jazz guitar player. They weren't saying, yeah, Bobby Broom, jazz guitarist. They would always have some kind of addendum, bluesy, funky. He played with Madonna. I never played with Madonna. I had friends that played with Madonna.
But that's not a bad gig to get associated with, though.
That's great if you actually had the gig, but I never had that gig. I mean, come on, stop. Yeah. What is this? So I didn't appreciate that. So I'm like, man, I need to work on my career now and make my identity. And that's what I did. From 1999, I bought a computer. That was like it. I need a computer and I need to get to work, whatever that means. So you talk about selling yourself and all that kind of thing. Man, that was so hard. Like to say, I'm Bobby Broom, I play jazz guitar, I played with such and such and such. And, just to present yourself like that. Matter of fact, it was so hard.
Sure.
So hard. But I got better at it. And one of the things that helped was, sending an email and getting an immediate response. Like, oh, snap, somebody they must know who I am if they can write me right back.
Absolutely.
So that was helpful. It was a learning experience and, learning how to manage myself, basically. And I did it until I couldn't really do it anymore. I started making records.
It'll work.
Yeah.
Here you are.
Yeah.
And man, let's talk about Soul Fingers.
Okay.
That's a lot of record there, man. 10 songs, 59 minutes, 1 original, 9 covers of great songs when you were growing up. You got Come Together and While My Guitar Gently Weeps by the Beatles, Procol Haim's Whiter Shade of Pale, which to me is like, every time I hear that song, it's like, you got to stop.
Yeah.
You just have to stop and honor that opening. It's phenomenal. And you got some other great tunes. But the cool thing is you did exactly what you said. You gave them their own flair. I mean, you honored the music, but it's not anything like the music, which is great, man. And it's really, it's great music, man. You did a fantastic job. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, you have something in there, it sounds like a soft harmonica or like an accordion in the background, real soft.
I'm so glad you said accordion because that's exactly what it was supposed to sound like.
What was that?
It's a melodica.
Oh, the thing that
that Weldon was trying to play that. Yeah, that's funny how that circled.
Yeah,
but and what we were going for was an accordion sound, an accordion vibe, because there's a style of, I don't know what you call this specific style of Brazilian music that includes the accordion. It's like a regional thing and a style of music that includes accordion. And that's what we were after. It
was really soft. It sounded great, man. And, I usually listen to this a few times. And the first time I didn't pick it up. And I'm like, and I was like, this is really neat, man. That was really clever. It sounded good there, man. And you got some long runs in there. They sound great. Really good on your guitar. The other songs I liked was Ode to Billy Joe, again, Whiter Shade of Pale. Any significance of those 3 songs in particular? I mean, they're all classic, great songs.
Yeah, they're all significant in their own way in my life. To think that I was like, first of all, the Procol Harum song, Whiter Shade of Pale, that's a deep song. It's dark. It's dark lyrically and musically in a way. And it's just deep for a 6-year-old. Like, what was I seeing in music to really attach to that song? But as you said, music was my friend, and all these songs were my friends. Like, I'd have the radio by me at all points every day, as much as I could. And when a song would come on, it was like seeing a friend.
Yeah.
And so these songs, that's how I feel about them. So, that song is like, yes, of course, of course, Whiter Shade of Pale. Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking, dude, you were 6. What the heck? So, Ode to Billy Joe, similar in terms of how I feel about it. That song was the first, that was basically how the record began, meaning the idea for this record. 2015, I had that dormant summer after the 2 tours, 2 summers touring with Steely Dan. And I said, okay, this is the summer I've kind of been dreading, but here it is. So let's see let me open up GarageBand. My buddy's been telling me I should check out GarageBand, and I never wanted to, because when I do home recording, I lose my mind. I start growing beards and not washing. And, I get really serious.
There's really no other way, man. You can't casually learn any of these things.
Well, I'm a perfectionist just in when I do songs, I want everything just so. I want everything, and I stay up and work at stuff until it's just right according to me. So I didn't have time for that in my life, the way that my life was teaching and playing, and I don't have time to be staying up all night doing tunes. But this summer I did, 2015. So I said, let me open up GarageBand and see what this is about. And I went to some organ sounds, and I said, man, these sound kind of good, So I start recording something, and it was, I said, I'm going to do this tune, Ode to Billy Joe. I feel like doing Ode to Billy Joe with the organ. So I put it in 7/8, and then I get to the hook, Billy Joe McAllister Jones. I'm like, that can't be in 7. That's got to be in 4. So I try to do that, and you can't do that. You can't change time signatures in GarageBand. So I had to immediately graduate to Logic, which is the adult.
That song is in 7/8.
You say, yeah. 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 That's why you can't dance to it. It grooves like a mug, but it's hard to dance to. but so yeah, I had to go to Logic, which is the professional version of GarageBand. So now I'm learning this software, and I finished the tune. I had horns, parts, and just like the record. And I'm like, man, this sounds cool. I'm like, man, what am I doing? I'm going to do another tune. So I did another tune, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I'm on a mission. What's this mission I'm on? And I'm starting to figure out what I want to do for my new record. And it's going to be a record with the organization. And it's got too many instruments on it. It's like too big. It's not a trio record. The core of it is, but it's got other stuff going on and a different feeling in terms of it's not the customary jazz record. It's got a soul music underpinning. There's something else going on here. I need a producer. I need somebody to help me manifest this vision. Who can I call that can help me do this? And Steve's name, that was like, that's it. Steve Jordan. Who else better, than Steve Jordan? Like
have you worked together with him, or?
Yeah, we worked together as members of Sonny's band as recently as 2005. So he played when I rejoined Sonny's band, he was in it. And he was there for about a year and a half, bouncing between Sonny's band and John Mayer. He'd play a gig with us, get on a plane, go do a gig with John Mayer, come back, do a gig with us,
wow.
And we played together one time with Sonny back in the 80s, but just one time. Yeah. So we didn't really know each other until 2005.
That's funny how you just thought of him to call to do the production on that.
Yeah, both became fast friends at that point. I mean, at least as in terms of musical friends.
Sure.
We realized that our vision musically was very, was compatible, and we had things in common more than we even knew. We learned a lot more about our commonalities after he agreed to do the record with me. We learned we were both Capricorn. We think a lot alike. There's a lot of stuff was happening that was kind of serendipitous that you just can't make up, but was happening. He'd think of something and I'd say it, or stuff like that. And so I knew him well enough that I felt comfortable asking him to do it as a as a professional, but I needed help. I needed his help. And I think that's how I posed it to him. I need your help. I need you to produce this record. Would you be willing and able to produce this record? And he got back to me immediately, like, let's go. I didn't expect him to say yes. I really didn't. I didn't expect anything really. I kind of thought he's too busy. He produces John Mayer and Sheryl Crow and Buddy Guy, Robert Cray and Keith Richards. People. He's always busy. And I thought, he's not gonna have time to do no jazz record with me. I was wrong. And I didn't let my not fear, but my hesitancy or, my doubt, I didn't let that affect my behavior, like I asked him anyway.
Good. That's right, man. What do you say? People, no one buys it unless it's sold first.
Exactly. So when he said yes, and I was like, oh snap. Okay. Wow. Now I got to finish this demo. I got to do 8 more tunes. And, we started scheduling and everything came together, but it came together over the course of basically about a year. It was like the longest record in terms of, the production of it I've ever done, and just watching things unfold. Like, we had no plans to have a string section on songs, but it unfolded that way and it made absolute sense. And we did it, and so yeah, it was a blast to do.
Did you use the same guitar and the same amp through the whole record?
Yes.
What was that?
Yes. It's I have a guitar now that's handmade for me by a luthier named Dan Caintop. Caintop Guitars, KOENTOPP. He's a luthier that was born and raised in Chicago. He's since moved to LA, lives in LA now, and he makes beautiful instruments. This guy studied with the Stradivarius. They have the largest Stradivarius community here in Chicago. The second largest in the world is here in Chicago. And he apprenticed and then worked with them for many years, learning to make fine instruments, violins, fine stringed instruments. And so he transferred that knowledge to, he started out as a kid in high school making guitars with his dad, who was an architect. And so he transferred his knowledge of and skill to guitar making. And
sounds great. Sounds really good.
Yeah. A beautiful instrument. And then I play Standell. I was playing a Standell amplifier, which is a solid state amp, the same amp that Wes played at the end of his life. And it's a funny, I was talking about the serendipity. So I was able to get my hands on a Standell. I have it here at the house, and I just I don't even take it out. It's just like my personal piece. I practice on it, and I recorded my demo for Soul Fingers using the Standell. And so I'm listening to the tunes, and I'm saying, this is while we're in pre-production now, and I'm going, in talks with Steve. And I said to myself one day, man, how am I going to get a sound that's going to be as good, a guitar sound, as coming out of this Standell? I don't know how that's going to happen. And so I called Steve up and I said, hey, man, what about the guitar? Like, what are we going to do? What are your plans for recording the guitar? And he said, well, I was thinking about that. He's like, I know you don't like tube amps. You like solid state. He's like, this place that we're going, Brooklyn Sound, is like a museum, literally, of instruments and amps. And
you recorded this back in the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
He wouldn't have it no other way. Yeah. So he says Brooklyn Sound has every amp you imaginable, literally hundreds of amps and guitars and basses and keyboards. So we'll find something, but, I'll run you direct through the board and then we'll reamp you with something. And he's like, and, they have a Standell here. I'm like, what? Yeah, they have a Standell there that we thought you might, Standell is the amp, the last amp that I said, I know what it is. I said, dude, the demos that I sent you, it's the guitars. I'm playing through a Standell. I have a Standell. So that was one of those things that happened, and just one. There were so many of them, little situations that happened like that between him and me. Yeah.
That's awesome. But so let me. You don't like tube amps. That's unlike a lot of guys. What is your thoughts on that?
Generally, no. It's there are some that I've played through that I do like. In fact, Steve hit me to this Magnetone that I wound up buying. It's from the 60s, I believe, and it's a tube amp. But generally, and this opinion comes from playing through probably badly maintained Fender Twins over the years on the road, rentals that were poorly maintained and just, So my experience is that playing through a tube amp, there's that whole analog thing where the sound goes through and it has to deal with the tubes, and there's also some extra physical sound that happens along with the note. It's like, and that bothers me technically. I feel like it kind of hinders my sound, like it hinders my flow. Like it just bothers me. I don't like to hear or feel that extra push through tubes. I like the smoothness of the solid state, the transparency of the sound. Now, like I said, there are some tube amps that I don't feel that, and that's okay. I did make a record some years ago now through one of these Fender Twins that was, from a special year 53 or whatever, right. Special year, special tweed, blah, blah, blah. I just was playing through it to appease the engineer who was raving about it. But, I had my amp set up ready to go. But then I played through this thing and I was like, man, this is great. And I wound up playing it on that record. But yeah, that's my experience.
If you had to look back and give younger Bobby advice, what advice would you have, assuming you're open to listening, what advice would you have given yourself? Make your life that would have made your life easier, not necessarily musically, but just life in general, or music, whatever you want.
Easier. Wow. I mean, it's still a work in progress. So, and there are things I can look back to and say that I kind of wish I hadn't done, but if I hadn't done them, I wouldn't be where I am. Like you said, if I had taken the position as the director of the guitar department at the University of Hartford, I wouldn't have made 14 records, probably wouldn't have made 14 records. Something else would have happened, though.
You wouldn't have met your wife, too.
I wouldn't have met my wife, but I doubt that. I wouldn't have met her because she's from Chicago. There are certain, there's connective tissues. There's connectivity that has happened as a result of things and the decisions that I made. I mean, that's how life is. And, the answer for me, at least, has been to make the best of every decision, to do the next best, the next best thing. And I don't mean the next best thing as a consolation, but I mean, whatever the next thing is I do has the best, So I thought I was making the right decision by trying to get my degree. I knew I was fudging with the, having it also be about a woman. I knew that was not quite, not quite right. But I was a daredevil, and I was like, hey, I'm going to make this work. I mean, at least I'm going to move and get my degree and see what happens. And then when the decision to stay or not, I was deep in it and I wasn't going to go anywhere. Plus I was working pretty much like I was when I was in New York. So it was like, okay, well, I just live in Chicago. The way that I justified it was, if I lived in New York, it wouldn't be about me playing local gigs, because that's not the kind of famous I want to be. Like who's successful that just plays at a place or plays places locally? I have to develop a guitar identity, a sound that either other people want to use, other musicians want to call, or one that I can exploit on my own that, an audience will be attracted to. So that became my goal after I moved. That's, that doesn't have anything to do with where I am. I can do that. It's me, it's about me. So, to answer your question, I kind of gave some little hints of an answer. But like you said, if certain things didn't happen, then other things wouldn't have happened. And I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be doing what, I've done or what I'm doing. I don't think. I'd be doing other things. I'm sure it'd be just as cool, if not cooler, but,
All right. So, Bobby, I know you did some work or hooked up with Kenny Burrell. That's got to be some good experience. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, great experience, great learning experience. And again, an unbelievable story. And, I was just talking to a former student and he was asking me, do you regret not staying in New York? And I said, well, no, not directly. Like not really, like where I think, well, wow, if I'd stayed in New York, like what? I don't know what would have happened. I'm sure my career would have taken a different directions, but plenty of things happened for me as a result of my being in Chicago. And like I told my student, one thing I did get from being a New Yorker and having the experiences that I had as a youngster in New York, which is really the thing that made me feel the way that I did and do, is that I felt, believed, had experienced life such that, anything is possible. I mean, if I could go from feeling like, man, I was born a generation or two too late to be involved in jazz the way that I want to be with the people I want to be involved with. And then these things began to happen to me. Like, there was no guarantee that, or no logical reason why these things should happen to me in particular, other than I was so desirous of that. I must have put it out into the universe really strong, because things started coming back. That's the only reason. I wasn't a great player. I was just a very hungry and capable, with a lot of potential, young musician that adored jazz music and, everything about it and its people. So I came away from New York feeling that it's not the locale, it's me, it's the person. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And yes, it didn't make logical sense, but hey, so I'm at a club one night with about 5 people in my party at my table.
This in New York or Chicago?
This is in Chicago. This is in Chicago when I first got there, within the first year or so. And I'm going to the club to see the great Eddie Harris, saxophonist, and Nat Adderley on cornet, Cannonball Adderley's brother. And they had a quintet, and we went to see them. And so coincidentally, I had met Eddie Harris maybe about a year prior to visiting this club. I was on the road with Sonny, and I had a night off. Eddie Harris was playing somewhere. Me and a couple of the guys went to see him, and on a break, I guess I went up and introduced myself and started to talk to him and told him, I was in town playing with Sonny, and, and that was that. There was just that meeting, wherever it was. And then, so fast forward now to a year later, I'm in Chicago. I'm going to hear him play. So on a break, I approached him and I said, "Hi, remember me? I met you about a year ago. I'm the guitar player that plays with Sonny." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I remember you. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I live here." So he's like, "Well, wow, you have your guitar?" And I said, "No, but I live within walking distance." That's like the running story in my life. The same thing happened with Art Blakey, right? You got your guitar. No, but I live 2 blocks away. So I live within walking distance, so look, I can go get it. And he's like, "Yeah, go get it, man." So this is Eddie Harris asking me to come and sit in. So I ran home, got my guitar, come back. And when I come back into the club, the club owner is on the stage about to introduce the band, but he's got some different members ready to play. He's got a young piano player. He's got a young drummer. Was it the drummer? I can't remember. But yeah, it was 2 guys sitting in.
Different than before the set.
Not in the band.
Yeah.
Sitting in. So I walk in the club and the place was packed. It was a Friday or Saturday night. So I walk in with my guitar and amp in hand, looking to see, okay, what am I going to hum? And then I see 2 new guys on the stage. So I'm like, oh, perfect, perfect timing. I'm here. They're about to sit in. I can join them, So I hunch over and I'm, making my way through this packed club. And I set my amp and guitar against the wall, back at the back of the stage, not on the stage. I'm on the floor. The stage is elevated by a couple of feet. And so then I kneel. I'm on my knee, like trying to propose. And I'm trying to get the club owner's attention. And so he pauses in his spiel and looks over to his side and down, and there I am doing air guitar, like, wide-eyed, like, nodding. Can I sit in too? And he looks at me and he looks out into the audience and he shakes his head back and forth, demonstratively no. And I was shocked, like, wait a minute, maybe he didn't understand what I'm asking. Like, wait, what? So I waited for him to say some more stuff, and then I did it again, like, hey, is it okay? And he did it again. No. Shook his head no. So now by this time, Eddie Harris and Nat Adderley are like, hey, man, it's cool, man. We asked him to play. It's okay. He can come up, let him play. And he says to them, no. And he walks off the stage. So I'm like, what's going on? Now I'm kneeled here at the side of the stage. The band is starting. It's Friday night. The place is packed, and I look like an idiot. So I thought for a minute. I stood up and I waited a minute or so, and then I went out to follow the club owner. And he was sitting outside of the club, and I had just approached him, and I said, hi, my name is Bobby Broom. I obviously I play guitar. I said, you don't know me. I just moved here, but I've played with people, and I played with Sonny Rollins. I played with Art Blakey. I played,
yeah,
and he proceeds to like lambast me, like I don't like what Sonny Rollins is playing nowadays.
You got to be kidding me.
You were the guitar player that came with him to the jazz festival last year. Or 2 years ago, whatever. I don't want you on my stage because you can't play and he's not playing nothing. And
you've got to be kidding me.
I'm lying. I'm flying. I'm 26 years old. 25, 26 years old. This is a grown man, my age now, in his 50s, telling me this. I was shocked, first of all. And so then I kind of gathered myself and I said, wait a minute, hold up. First of all, you can't condemn me for playing the music that I'm hired to. Yeah. I'm playing with a legend. He's hiring me to play this, whatever he's playing. And second of all, the guys asked me to play, and where I'm from, the musicians determine who plays with them or not, and they invited me to play. Third, I said, I don't think you've ever really heard me play. So I was pissed, and then I just turned around and walked away, and my intention was to get my people and split. I'm out of here.
Right.
But then it dawned on me, wait a minute, dude, you got to go get your guitar.
Yeah.
Guitar and amp are up on the side of the stage, and now you got to walk through the crowd again looking like an idiot. So I'm like, oh man, okay. So I don't know. I didn't really calculate it. I just walked to the stage. I grabbed my stuff. I turned around and I said, man, the hell with that. I put my amp up on the stage.
Good.
And I got up there and plugged in and played.
Good for you.
And I was angry. I was fueled by that adrenaline, And
like, what's he gonna do? Come on stage and throw you off?
Right. And
let him. I mean, at this point,
I played, whatever it was, I played the best I could in that moment, and the crowd went crazy. They were screaming after my solo. So I'm like, oh man, cool. So then we played another tune. And they gave me another solo. Same reaction. Screaming. So then I got dramatic. I unplugged my amp right after the last note of my solo. Bling! Unplugged my amp, took my guitar off and headed off to the stage. And Eddie Harris is like, man, where you going, man? I was like, and he's like, we're going to feature you on the next tune. And I just looked at him and nodded like, you get it. I got going to leave now. So then I make my way through the crowd with my amp and guitar, and people are like clamoring, like, what's your name, man? Where you from? What are you doing? It was like a scene from a movie. And so long story short, because it goes on, there's more to the story, but long story short, I was sitting outside the club after some more calamity with the club owner and local people, musicians and their wives and everybody. They jumped on this guy for treating me the way that he did. And so I walked out into that bedlam and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I caused? I'm like, I'm never going to work in Chicago ever now.
That's the new guy.
I mean, for this, like, I just wanted to sit in, So I go out and sit in the car and I'm like, I'm not, so somebody comes and knocks on the car window and I'm looking like, who is this? And they said, roll the window down. So I roll the window down and they're like, man, you need to go back in the club. I said, I'm not going back in there. Are you kidding me? They said, no, you need to go back in there because the gentleman has apologized to you. And he asked if you would come and sit in with Kenny Burrell, who starts his run tomorrow night.
Wow.
That's how I met Kenny.
Holy crap. That's almost impossible. What is the light?
Believe that?
No, that's like
crazy. It's crazy.
That is wow. Talk about getting support from the university. The universe, even when you don't want to do it, the universe is forcing you to do it.
Oh my goodness. So of course I go back the next night and I meet Kenny and I play, and he decides from that meeting that he's going to come back to Chicago several months later, and he formed the precursor to what became the jazz guitar band, Kenny Burrell and the Jazz Guitar Band. So he came back to Chicago and he put something together with myself, another younger guitarist from Chicago, and then a rhythm section from Chicago. And we did that gig. I guess maybe he was still checking me out. We did that weekend or week at the showcase, and I gave it away. I wasn't supposed to say, but and we did that week, and then several months after that, he called me and said, I'd like to form a group with you and jazz guitarist Rodney Jones, who was an idol, a childhood idol of mine when I was in my teens. Rodney grew up near, in the neighborhood, and he was about 5 years older than me, and he was playing with Dizzy Gillespie at the time. So I was following him around everywhere I could, trying to go to his house and jam, and we were friends. So
was he a music and art guy also?
No, he wasn't. I think he was from upstate New York, but he was living in the city at the time, hot shot, playing with Dizzy at 20 years old. And, so I really looked up to him. So now fast forward, 10 years, and now, I'm in a band that's going to include him and with the iconic Kenny Burrell. So Kenny calls and says, I want to form this band called the Jazz Guitar Band, and I want you to do it. And we're going to record. And we're going to record a live record for Blue Note Records at the Village Vanguard.
Wow!
What? And so that's what happened. That's what we did.
How long were you guys together?
We were together maybe 3 years or so. We toured a little bit, but we didn't get the support from the industry, nearly the support that I felt we deserved. First of all, just because of the story behind the graciousness of Kenny, basically handpicking two young guitarists that he was, basically mentoring, and ushering them into the awareness of the jazz public, the jazz audience, by making a live record, and saying, endorsing two younger musicians on his instrument and saying, hey, that's a story.
Yeah.
That's no, who does that? That's not a common thing. And to do it in such a bold way where, you're making a live recording at the Vanguard, and it's coming out on Blue Note. Come on, man. What kind of marketing? I don't understand why that band didn't get more attention, but it didn't. And
did they release the record even?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was on LP, on CD. It's called Generation. It was actually two volumes, because the first volume was called Generation, and then we had recorded enough stuff. We were at the Vanguard for a week, Tuesday through Sunday or whatever it is. And so we recorded enough material, and after the first record, they released another one called Pieces of Blue and the Blues. Pieces of Blue and the Blues may still be available online, but Generation is not, and that's another question I have. Why not? In this age where it doesn't take much of anything to carry a title, it's digital. There's no bulk. There's no, it's physically nothing. But for whatever reason, they pulled it. It's been pulled from the Blue Note catalog, at least for now.
The Vanguard, is that over on 7th Avenue, like in 12th Street or something? Man, I saw Tony play there.
Tony
Lewis.
Lewis, really?
Yeah, I saw him. Man, I was in town. maybe like 10 years ago, and I was there. I think I might have been with my son, or I think I was with my son, and we stopped in.
Wow.
And I knew he was playing, so I just swung by. It was cool.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that was the one and only time I played there was that week.
That's wild, man.
Yeah,
so
crazy.
That's really cool. What did you get out of that experience? Like, is there anything that you learned from Kenny in particular?
Well, many things. He was an elder statesman, if ever there was one. His carriage and, he was just an elegant gentleman. And so there's that you just glean from someone that you're elder like that. You take something away from that naturally.
Like his presence, you mean, how he conducted himself?
Yeah. And then musically, he's one of the few that created his own sound and learned to, exploit it. And I mean that in the most positive,
sure,
and productive ways. So that's something also that that you can't really talk about it, but you see and experience that, and it leaves an impression on you. It gives you something to aspire to, and. So there's just so much in that kind of thing, just being able to be close to someone and to actually work with them, Yeah.
Is Rodney still around too?
Rodney is still around. Rodney is in New York still, and he is teaching. He's a professor at Juilliard. And playing, he recorded for Blue Note as a leader. Several years later, he made 1 or 2 records for Blue Note. Yeah.
So you guys have had somewhat similar career paths. You've done a lot more recording as far as a leader. But I mean, he's an educator. You're an educator. Yeah. You played for Dizzy. You played for Sonny.
Most jazz musicians, if they're not fortunate enough to be working to the extent that they don't have time to teach, most jazz musicians, successful jazz musicians today, have to supplement their careers, and that's usually done through jazz education, because jazz education now is such a huge part of how money is generated in jazz nowadays. So I began teaching at the beginning of my career, and I never thought that it would be such an important area of my career, but it certainly is. Yeah.
Man, any other guitar anecdotes?
Well, it's just cool when I think about the guys that I idolized especially just as a kid. George Benson, and being friendly with him enough to talk to him on the phone, or when I go to Arizona, he comes by and sees me play, and we chat, that kind of thing, and being close to Kenny Burrell, and being friendly with Schofield, and it's just really cool that that my life has afforded me those kinds of opportunities, to meet, have those people admire my playing and that kind of thing.
You mentioned Art Blakey before. You want to talk about that? How did that come about?
Well, that was a similar a similar situation as the Kenny Burrell story. This was right after I returned from my first year at Berklee College of Music. Well, I only went for 1 year. And after that first year, I decided I didn't want to go back to Boston. I wanted to stay in New York and try to get in on the opportunities that I saw my friends getting to play in touring bands and make records. You know, people were playing on people's records. And I thought, well, man, you know, I want to go back home, so maybe I can do that. So I was home that summer. There was a club that was 2 blocks from my house, my apartment, and I could see the corner of the block. It was 97th Street, and the club was McKell's, and I could see the corner of 97th Street from my bedroom window. So one night I was looking out the window, and I looked over there, and it looked like a bunch of commotion was happening. I thought, well, wow, man, something's going on. Let me see who's over there. So I just went over there to see. And it was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers playing. And out of the club walks James Williams, the piano player who I had just met a year prior at Berklee and played some kind of recital for one of the teachers or something. I was asked to play, and James was playing. So James walks out and, hey, man, how you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I live down the street. He's like, man, you got your guitar? Again, that's that was the line of the decade. You got your guitar? I said, no, but I live 2 blocks. I go get it. He's like, go get it. Hurry up. So I go get it. I come back, and Blakey asks, we got two young bucks we want to bring up to the stage. One of them was Wynton Marsalis.
Oh, my God.
The other one was me. So I get up and we play. And I don't remember what set it was. It must have been the second set, but we were there the whole rest of the night.
Wow.
Just leave. We played the whole night. And then he says, come back tomorrow.
That's so cool.
We came back tomorrow. We came back the whole rest of the whatever. He had a 2-week run. We were there every night. Like we were on the gig basically. And we're learning the music. Then next thing I know, Bobby Watson, the saxophonist, I guess he was asked to give me the music. And so I remember going to Bobby's house and him giving me a bunch of Blakey's music. And, you know, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to learn this music. And then Blakey says to me one night, you're a jazz messenger now. And I'm like, okay.
So you played with, how long were you with Art, the jazz messenger?
I did not take the gig.
Why?
I did not accept the gig. Personal reasons. There was some, I heard that there was some drug use going on, and I was deathly afraid of that.
Good for you.
And a bunch of my friends, guys that I had either grown up with or had strong ties to for years as a young musician in New York, through high school and playing experiences. A bunch of those guys had hooked up with a hot young trumpet player named Tom Browne, who was he came on the scene playing with Sonny Fortune, and then he went on to be signed by GRP Records. And that was part of the allure to come back to New York for me, was that a couple of my friends were on Tom Browne's new record and everything sounded great. And so I come home, I begin playing in Tom Browne's band.
Okay.
I was eventually signed by GRP. But at the time that Blakey asked me to join the Messengers, I had the choice to either do that or to be in Tom Browne's band with a bunch of my friends.
Yeah.
So it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Brainer. So, you know, and that steered my career in the direction that it did. I became a, quote, recording artist. You know, I, got associated with Dave Grusin and the GRP Records label and sound and, that whole Funkin' for Jamaica, the hit. And, you know, I had a moderate hit with my first record, Clean Sweep, Got a lot of radio attention and worldwide.
What was the radio station back in New York? I can't.
WRVR.
RVR, that's right.
Yeah, I never forget, man. I came home. This was like right around the time that my record was being made. And I came home one night and turned my stereo on and ding 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 ding, and I'm like, man, what's this country music? And I'm like,
they changed the format.
They changed the format.
Yeah, they did that on a couple of.
What? Like what? Terrible timing for that.
Yeah, but you think in New York, what's the only thing less popular than jazz on the radio? It's going to be country, right? Like, I mean, like I've interviewed a lot of country guys, and I'm honest. I'm like, listen, nobody I knew ever listened to country in New York. So I don't even think you were allowed to listen to country. I mean, it was right. It was just like it wasn't done. Maybe if you lived in Queens or I don't know, not in the Bronx and shit.
Queens a bad rap.
No, I'm just saying. But I know, like, I didn't grow up and listen to. If you had someone in the Bronx listening to country, that wouldn't be. Imagine you pull up to someone in the side of the car and they got the Camaro and playing country. It's like that. It wouldn't happen. It's just not out of context,
Yes. Yeah.
So, wow, man.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You had this like thing like of responsibility where you didn't you heard about there were drugs and I mean you had the other gig.
I was just afraid.
Great.
I was just afraid. That was it. I mean, that was the time. And that at that time in the 1970s, man, I remember seeing documentaries on PBS about heroin use and the scourge of in Harlem. And
well, that was a crack time in the city.
No, that was before that.
That was before that. Okay.
Yeah, that was heroin. That was a big heroin epidemic in the 70s in Harlem. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I used to go to if I had an appointment, doctor's or whatever appointment, and it was more convenient to meet my mom at the junior high that she taught at, which was on 114th, Wadley Junior High School at that time. And I would go get on the bus and go up to Harlem. I mean, it was just the beginning of Harlem, but 117th, 116th, it was really bad there. Yeah. Like the addicts were all over the street and just it was, and man, I was so afraid when I'd have to go get my mom, like, whoa. But so I had a real fear about that. And so,
that's like that movie Across 110th Street, right? That's the way it was, man. Yeah. You know what really trips me out? I remember going down to the Bowery. That was like, I used to avoid that like the plague. That was Skid Row.
Remember Lower Manhattan, Avenue A, B, and all that. Yeah, I never went there. Never went down there.
But now you go to the Bowery, it's all shishi. I couldn't, it's like it's crazy, man. I mean that's a good situation. That was really bad there, but I mean, that's a good thing. One of the upsides, but most of the other stuff is kind of like unfortunate, man.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a New York City question, man. What's your favorite New York City food?
Oh, shoot, man. New York City food. Man, I don't know. I mean, when I eat differently now than I used to, but
you're vegetarian, I think you said, right?
No, not even close. But I just don't eat a lot of processed stuff and like, white bread and stuff. Like I don't.
Yeah, processed food. I don't eat any of that stuff either, man.
Like I couldn't eat a Nathan's hot dog.
Oh man, I would never eat that.
What was it? Gray papaya? Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was gray papaya, and it was just
2nd Street.
Yeah.
And then we'd like
Orange Julius.
Orange Julius, right? But we challenge each other of gray papaya, who could eat the most, hot dogs.
Yeah, I don't eat any of that stuff.
And have a stomach ache afterwards, Yeah, but man, I don't know that I had or could even really cite a New York dish.
All right, let me ask you this. What's the biggest difference between Chicago and New York?
Yeah, I think you asked me and I didn't answer. I feel the biggest difference between Chicago and New York in terms of the music scene, from my perspective, is that Chicago allows for a certain kind of originality, simply because of the fact that it's not in the middle, it's not the epicenter of the music. So where, by being the epicenter of the music, as New York is, it kind of dictates the styles and trends of any particular time. So Chicago doesn't have that responsibility. It doesn't have that effect on musicians. So you don't have to sound like whatever the hip new thing is in order to be relevant, current. You don't have to do that in Chicago. You can do what you do. You can do your own thing. You can actually be original. You can come up with your own. You're free to. That's just how I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it still today. I see it that way from my own experience. I see it in an artist like Marquise Hill, who is a trumpet player that has emerged, and he came to prominence by winning the Thelonious Monk international competition on trumpet, and has a style that's all his own. My experience was, when I was in those formative years of my mid-20s, the guitarists of the day in jazz were John Scofield and Mike Stern. And if you didn't sound like one or both of them, you weren't cool. You weren't, fashionable. And there were really no active, besides Pat Metheny. And Pat Metheny had his own style and sound, and, his music had a character that was singular. So, if you were trying to sound like Pat Metheny, you definitely, I feel that way with anybody. If you model yourself after someone, you have to really be doing something else. In addition, you have to integrate it with your own things to the extent that you don't sound exactly like that person. And some artists are very hard. It's very hard to do that because their styles are so prominent, so dominant, that it's hard to play like them and not take on too much of their character. So being removed from those influences of having to sound like Stern or Sco in order to, and that's not to say that I didn't dabble in that, because I did. If you're asked to do a fusion gig, playing, that style of music, which I was on occasion during those years in the 90s. Yeah, I dabbled with effects, but only to the degree that it made sense to me. And like I said, I tried to integrate it with my own style and my own idea about how, what was comfortable for me to play. I couldn't just turn on this distortion pedal and start wailing a la Hendrix or a la Stern, because that's not me. So I had to figure out ways to do it that made sense as far as my personality was concerned. So, but I didn't have to do too much of that because I wasn't getting called for those kinds of gigs.
Right.
And I was pursuing my own idea, my own sound, my own style, practicing to develop my own sound and voice. And, that's what I was able to do. Yeah.
Well, Well, dude, I can't thank you enough. You're awesome. Thank you for, sharing all these cool stories, 14 solo records, professor of pedagogy. You're a badass.
Figure out how to use that word.
That's an SAT word that's going to go in and out, I think I have to tell you.
It's not important.
Man, thank you. And anytime, you're welcome back on here to tell some more stories, and you dropping anything else, man, come back on the show. I want to tell people, thanks so much for your time, Bobby. I want to tell people where they could find you. First of all, if you haven't heard Bobby Broom's music, please check him out. It's Bobby Broom, Broom. He's got a great website, a really good website. It's pretty deep and extensive at bobbybroom.com. I'd like you to check out his new album. It's called Soul Fingers. You can get there, go to bobbybroom.com and find it. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify. Really cool record. And he's got 13 other records out there you need to listen to. And he's also done some great stuff. You're talking about a guy who's a very sharp teacher and a great jazz player. And if you're into jazz at all, I would encourage you to go to mymusicmasterclass.com and look up Bobby Broom. He's got 2 or 3 courses there. And I'm sure you love all the material because this guy's got it's just a tremendous work ethic. And that's it. And are you touring to support the record?
We are, and as a matter of fact, we're going to Beijing next week.
Awesome.
And doing 2 nights at the Blue Note Beijing. Then we'll be in Knoxville. Yeah, they're doing a new PBS television series. They're under the auspices of the Knoxville Jazz Orchestra and the PBS affiliate there. And it's called Live at Lucille's. So that's going to be fun to play in front of a studio audience and have it be televised. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's awesome,
things
man.
are developing. And we've got some Portland Jazz Festival next year and, different things happening. Umbria Jazz Festival in Italy.
Yeah.
Next summer. Yeah.
Very cool.
So trying to keep it going.
So check out Bobby on tour and go to bobbybroom.com and see where he's at and tell him you heard the show. And when you go to China, don't eat the meat, bro.
Okay.
Hey, man, thank you for everything. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend in your social media channels. Thanks again to Bobby Broom for spending time with us. And please check out Bobby's music and support it. Make sure you go to the homepage of everyonelovesguitar.com and sign up to get on our newsletter list. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.